the 14 News Podcast.
We chase the thrill of the ghost train to feel that rush of raw fear and adrenaline. And Hollywood horror taps into that exact same primal nerve. But behind the silver screen scares lies a real, breathing legacy. While the Conjuring universe immortalises the terrifying case files of legendary paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, the most profound living legacy is their grandson, Chris McKinnell. Raised right there at the epicenter of the supernatural, Chris absorbed a lifetime of frontline paranormal knowledge before forging his own path. Using his extraordinary upbringing as a foundation, he has developed a global spirituality and a universal understanding of the unknown, crafting a philosophy of the paranormal that offers deep, tangible lessons for us all. In this truly fascinating, deeply insightful episode, Chris joins me on the 14 News Podcast to pull back the curtain on a lifetime lived between worlds.
Hello, Chris. Welcome. I can now say the award-winning 14 News Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
I'm really excited about this interview. I think you have some of the most interesting ideas and philosophy in the paranormal world. And obviously, we know kind of how you began. I think we don't need to go over that. I'm more fascinated in where your starting point was and your evolution in where you're going now and how that changed and why. So your first case was when you were 16. What was kind of your thoughts then and how you viewed the paranormal?
Well, I think you're taking a lot for granted by thinking that people know who I am.
Oh, okay. We could do that. I think most people should do anyway in this world who listen to this show, that they should know. So, Chris, you are the grandson, obviously, of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who have become cultural icons. Over a lot of rumors and like many famous people, lots of kind of legend. And to you, they were your grandparents who you deeply love, and they love you. So I imagine that must be quite difficult seeing that played out in public away from your knowledge of who they were as human beings.
Oh, certainly. But honestly, since the 1970s, my grandparents have been attacked as crackpots who believed in ghosts. And over the years, stories have circulated and they've changed. And lately, they've just been crazy as hell.
Yeah.
This is why I've resisted being in the public eye for so many years. In the 80s, I did the talk show circuit. I was in 3 of my grandparents' books. And then I said, you know what? I hate this. And I asked my grandmother to remove me from, subsequent editions of their books. They changed my name to Chris McKenna, which I didn't realize. It's not a big difference there, no. Graham, thanks. But they at least did that. I've seen my grandparents put on a pedestal and turned into these superheroes by Hollywood. Yeah. And the truth is, they were wonderful people who would drop anything to help anyone. They didn't charge for their services. I mean, yes, they would, if they had to travel far, they would have to ask for travel expenses, but only because they themselves were not making a lot of money. Yeah. They made their money by doing lectures in the 80s and early 90s. The books, look, anybody who's ever written a book will tell you, you're not getting rich writing books. And the movies didn't exist in my grandfather's lifetime. Yeah. So, they were doing their best with the limited resources they had, which I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the movies are what everyone knows. How different are they to the people that you knew?
Completely. Look, for anybody who watches those and thinks they're learning about the paranormal, you're watching a Hollywood fantasy based on real cases, but all of the details are completely different. completely different. They have to make it an engaging story that builds a mythology. They're building a world. They're not telling you a documentary. So please don't look at that and think you're seeing something real. Now, having said that, in Conjuring 3, the last scene in the movie, Patrick Wilson, as my grandfather, brings Lorraine out to the backyard and surprises her with a gazebo. And I cried because my grandfather really did do that. And there is still a gazebo in the backyard.
Really?
That was her dream to have that. As a matter of fact, here's an interesting bit of trivia. Their very first lecture back in like 1968, my grandparents were artists, starving artists.
Right.
And my grandfather would paint his idea of particular cases. And the local history museum, or his local history society, or whatever it's called, in town, wanted to build a gazebo in town. So they asked them to do a fundraiser and show their art and tell the stories behind it. And that was their very first lecture. And they enjoyed it, and they started doing it as a way of supplementing their income.
So they did it and thought, yeah, we can do this.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. And what's it like seeing like just your family portrayed in some of the biggest movies of all time? What's that feel like? I don't think I can ever ask anyone that before.
The first one, my grandmother loved it, and so I loved it. And honestly, I thought it was a great film. James Wan is a genius. The second one I didn't really care for. They tried to combine Enfield and Amityville, and they created The Nun. And as a Hollywood film, I know a lot of people, it's their favorite Conjuring film. Personally, I couldn't stand it because it really wasn't real at all.
Yeah.
By the third one, I was getting a little tired of it, and I haven't seen the fourth one at all because they just took it in a completely ridiculous direction. My mom is not a psychic. She has never had anything to do with the paranormal. She's terrified of the paranormal.
Right.
Matter of fact, I am still in shock. I was afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
Until I was 16, and my grandfather took me on my first case. My grandmother wasn't there that night. And I'm still in shock that my mother let me go.
Really?
She's never allowed her husband to go. He was never on a case because she was afraid he would bring something home. The one time I was working in their house one evening, I was getting online to talk to a young woman who was dealing with poltergeist activity in her house. Now, she was actually the one creating that activity.
Right.
But as soon as we connected online, the power in my mom's house dimmed down, browned out, and the TV turned off and everything else. And my mom's immediate reaction was, "Do you have to do that here?"
Amazing. What was it like? I'm just thinking what you just said. You said that you were scared of the dark, and I got into all this through, I lived in, it was literally like a Hollywood movie. It was, my home was that haunted. And for me, it was, I wanted to beat the fear. Was your first investigation a little bit of that? Okay, I've got this opportunity. I'm scared of the dark. Let's face it straight on. Or was there some different reason that you decided to go?
I did it because my grandfather asked me to do it, and I wasn't going to let him down, but I was terrified.
Right.
But you know what I learned, and this was the lesson I try to share with everyone. That night, all hell broke loose, and I have never, in all of my many, many cases, and I've seen thousands of cases, I have never seen as much activity in one night as I saw on that night. And I went home, and for the first time in my life, I went to bed with the light off. I had faced my fears, and it freed me. Immersion in your fear, once you've lived through it, it's a powerful thing. You know.
Yeah, you experienced it at its most extreme, and you went, I'm okay, because you learned how to deal with that and yeah, and protect
Well,
yourself
my
a bit.
grandfather, he was 17 when he went into World War II
Yeah.
in the Navy, and he saw a lot. So he looked at me being afraid, and he was like, no, my grandson's not going to be like this. And so I think he just wanted to give me my baptism of fire,
Yeah.
and I'll be grateful to him forever.
Yeah, of course, and we are as well, because we're getting your knowledge now in that. Funny enough, Chris, my granddad always says though he was in a Hollywood movie, because he was he was in Arnhem for a bridge too far, and when they're driving along, there's a line of tanks, and he says one of them's me. So a slight comparison, not quite the same.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
That was great. I love that movie.
Yeah, it was a great movie. I've watched it many times with him, and he always points out the moment that you know one of those people is him. So yeah, he was a great man who didn't believe in the paranormal, but always told me ghost stories of his experiences. He was one of those type of guys.
You know, my dad didn't believe in the paranormal either, ever. He didn't get along with my grandfather, and you know, he said out loud, you know, he's a charlatan. Now
Right.
he wasn't, but it's funny, as the years went on, and I was doing this work, his mind opened. It's not that he believed in ghosts and goblins and demons, but he did believe in energy, and he did believe in the phenomena. So I'm happy about that. As a matter of fact, he visited me a few days after he died. So I was in New Zealand. I didn't get to go home and be with him when he died. I was lucky. I got to spend a week with him 2 weeks before he died. And he was perfectly fine. He just died very peacefully. But I had done a lecture in New Zealand, and I came home that night, and I was staying at a friend's house in the guest room. And all of a sudden, 2 o'clock in the morning, the door starts vibrating. I'm hearing, brrr. I'm like, what the heck's going on? So I go over to the door and I open it, and it immediately stops. And the lady whose house I'm staying in is out there looking like, Chris, what are you doing in there? I'm like, no, let's see what's really going on. I close the door again, and it goes, brrr. I said, oh no, I'm not putting up with this tonight. Whatever followed me home from the school, because the school was haunted,
Right.
You don't have my permission. Stop it now. Immediately stopped. But then about 5 minutes later, I said, you know what, Dad, if that was you, go ahead and vibrate the door again. About a minute later, I said, okay, Dad, I'm glad to know you're okay. And immediately stopped again.
That's lovely. That's like acknowledgement also of your beliefs, I guess. If he was a bit skeptical, he was telling you he was okay and acknowledging your belief and saying, yeah, you know, I suppose it is.
I knew he was going to figure it out once he died. I mean,
Yeah,
I wasn't worried about it.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to that night, so you faced it head on. You're 16. What was kind of going through your head? Were you like, I'd like to learn more about this, and also when did you realize that you also had some abilities as well?
Oh, that was earlier. I didn't have a name for it.
Right.
I didn't until I was probably 18. My grandmother started helping me to understand what I was going through. At first, she was very hesitant because of my father and my mother's fear.
Yeah.
And so I grew up not knowing why I was feeling things in the dark and hearing people when there were no people whispering in my room. I didn't understand. I didn't understand why every bedroom I was in, and we moved a lot, every bedroom I went into was freezing cold. You know, everybody else's rooms were fine. Mine, no.
Right.
But my grandmother started to teach me when I was about 18. And that's when I started learning how to read auras. And I gave that up, by the way. So please, folks, don't reach out to me asking me to read your auras. I will not. I scared too many people because I am too damned honest.
Right.
And not going to tell you a comforting fairy tale. If you ask me to say what I see, I'm going to tell you.
Yes.
The last guy that there was this rather obnoxious lawyer. I went to dinner with him and his girlfriend a couple of years ago, and he wanted me to read his aura to show what a powerful man he was for his girlfriend. I said, look, I don't do that. I haven't done it in decades. I really am uncomfortable. No. Go ahead. Just tell her what you see. I said, listen, you have a drinking problem and you really need to take care of it. His answer was, you're fat. You need to go to the gym. I was like, I told you didn't want me to talk.
Yeah. That uncomfortable truth that they don't want to face, and then respond with deflection. Yeah. When
I lost 100 kilos. I'm doing okay.
Well done. I need to lose some as well at the moment. When you kind of read someone's aura and see something, is there, because I don't know anything about this, is there a potential that by telling someone their future is changed, or is it still set?
Of course. No, you have free will.
Right.
But look, the aura is only the table of contents of who you are in the moment.
Okay.
That's all it is. It's just a little bit of a guide. You have, as my grandmother put it, it's the table of contents. You have to go beyond it and read the book.
Right.
And even so, I don't believe the future is set in stone ever. We have free will. Now, that's from our perspective. I mean, if you really want to get into this is what I go into in my book. You know, time and space are intrinsically linked. That's a reality. But if you're above, in other words, if you're a spirit, for instance, or the higher self, you're outside of time and space. And that gives you a complete perspective where everything is at once. Even though we are in the act of creating everything around us, and we can make any decision we want, for someone looking from the outside, that has already been created.
Right.
You know, so when people meditate to communicate with their higher self or their ascended masters or whatever they want to call that, or God, whatever they want to call that, what they're actually tapping into is that greater consciousness that we all come from. I make the argument that we are actually, our consciousness is a receiver. We are not generating consciousness. That, yes, I understand that the evidence is overwhelming for that, but there are enough anomalies that we have to start looking at other explanations. I think that your body is just a car that you drive. You're here for a moment, you experience life for a reason, for whatever it is that you've held on to that you need to work out in this lifetime.
Yes.
And then you go back to the source. Now, if you are unable to let go completely, then parts will have to come back. That's what gets reincarnated. I don't believe that we are actually individual souls. I don't believe that the self is a real separate identity. Now, that can sound like something a little bit scary, but it isn't. Think about it. If you have multiple lifetimes, you're not the same person over and over and over again. In my last lifetime, the one I do remember, I was and my grandfather actually hypnotized me when I was 16. That was my first experience with it. I was in World War I. I was in France. It was nighttime, and mustard gas was coming down the slope toward us, and I was struggling with my gas mask. I couldn't get it on, and my friend helped me put it on. Then the next time I experienced it with my grandfather's help, it was in the 1920s. I was now running a general store in the Midwest of the United States. And I had married one of two sisters. My friend that had helped me in the trenches was married to the other sister. And then by the 1950s, this was another session that I did, not with my grandfather. I was now a deputy in Texas, and I had done a routine traffic stop, and somehow I was killed. I don't know how. I don't remember that. But that person, his personality was not mine.
Right.
All right. That part is the illusion. Whatever I was holding on to that's necessary to work out is what came back.
Okay.
And I see that also with ghosts. Ghosts who make an attachment to something, and so they are stuck here, or they choose to come back here, whether it's because of love, they're here to protect someone they care about, unfinished business, denial, that they have no life here any longer, or maybe they love their home and they don't want to pass over. Sometimes, of course, fear of where they might be going.
Yeah.
All of those are very real, but they're all about attachments and things that we hold on to. I think that's the real definition of karma. Karma isn't you do good, you'll get good in the next lifetime, or vice versa. It's that what you hold on to is what you come back to.
Okay. That's interesting. So is it a bit like, do you see there's almost like a hard drive up there? I know that's a very physical idea, that all our learning is contained, and then you can disattach that and come back down and learn some more stuff. Do you maintain any of that, or is it just maintained up there and it's for the kind of physical experience?
I believe that we are all one.
Okay.
That even you and I are actually one. That there is no separation except for the illusion of identity. I know that's deeply metaphysical, but there is a consciousness theory called panpsychism, that everything in the universe has some level of consciousness. Now, this is ancient wisdom as well, called animism, which I was lucky enough to have studied for a year and a half when I was in the Peace Corps in Mali in West Africa. I was working with those indigenous peoples.
Oh, amazing.
And I have also seen this with the Dreamtime of the Aborigines in Australia, or with the Kogi people in Aluna in the jungles of Colombia. We are using quantum physics and consciousness theory and psychology and cultural anthropology, and we're coming at the same destination from vastly different viewpoints, but those ideas are universal. And I find that amazing and beautiful. You know, there was a Sufi poet that I think very highly of. His name is Rumi. And he lived about 700 years ago. And he said, you are not a single drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a single drop.
Beautiful.
And I believe that when you cannot let go of that sense of self, then you're not going to be able to fully integrate with that higher, greater consciousness. And that's why you keep coming back. And there's nothing wrong with that. Coming back is what gives creation its drive. It's what gives us the ability to create the entire universe. You know, people ask, is the universe conscious? Well, everything in the material universe originated as in the center of stars that exploded billions of years ago. We are literally the universe looking back on itself and trying to understand itself. I think that's incredibly beautiful.
Absolutely is, yeah. And I think it's interesting what you say. And even on these islands, we kind of look at our past religions very much as, you know, something to be frowned upon. And I think people more and more, when we're looking at quantum physics, are aligning more with those kind of pagan ideas and the Druids that looked at the stars and looked at nature and how everything flowed together and had that deep kind of visceral sense of feeling and connection to the earth that we live on. And
absolutely.
Each other.
You know, I'm going to be giving a paper, a presentation, a webinar with the Society for Psychical Research, you know, out of London on October 19th. And it's about that. It's about the fact that we're all pointing toward the same mountain, the same destination from many different pathways. And that's what a religion is. It's a path that someone created themselves. And then others came along and paved over it and tried to make it their own. And unfortunately, so many people get so focused on the path, they're missing the destination.
Yes.
And the destination is the same regardless of what religion you're on following. Every religion that I have studied, and I've studied quite a number of them, including a lot that most people have never heard of, they have some of the same ideas over and over and over again. You know, the idea of oneness, the idea of treating the stranger as a brother. As you do unto the least of my brothers, so you do unto me. Yes. You know, that we are all one. And it's a shame that that idea is something that we, with our limited perspective, keep having to learn over and over again.
I think it's interesting you saying that, because I think religion is used and has been used for lots of different means, not always positive. And yet, when we look at them all, that is the main context of what it's trying to teach, isn't it? And like you say, we seem to have lost sight of that.
The problem is there's a difference between religion and spirituality. Religion can lead you to a spiritual relationship with that thing that we call God, that many people call God. But a spiritual relationship doesn't need religion to do that. And I think religion has been used to separate people often, historically especially. And that's really missing the whole point. If you sat down with those who actually are the figureheads of those religions, how many of them would say, yes, we want you to not love your neighbor? You know, everybody wants to demonize Muslims today, but the truth is, Muslims, real true followers, not radicals of any religion, because any radical is bad, but a true follower, they will treat the stranger as a brother, as somebody who's honored and cared for. I'm about to move to Albania, which is predominantly Muslim.
Right.
And their culture is one in which the stranger is king, in which they will greet you as warmly as you could ever hope to be greeted. And I'm also going to be doing a lecture tour in Ireland. And as you're probably well aware, they are some of the sweetest, most wonderful, kindest people in the world.
Yeah. I've got a Muslim neighbor, and he calls me brother. That's what he calls me. Gives me food, and I've got Jewish heritage, you know, and he's my neighbor, and we treat each other as neighbors. It's and that's how I believe, how we should treat everyone. And I think it is interesting almost within, I think, spirituality, like you were saying, it's about a journey rather than rules. And by going on that journey, there is self-discovery. Is that kind of where you've been on as well?
Yes. Yeah. I studied a lot of religions. I was always envious of people's faith. And I wanted that. And so I tried everything. And none of it was right for me. And I finally realized, it was a humbling experience, to be quite honest. NASA had made a projection that there are more living worlds in the universe than grains of sand on Earth.
Wow.
And I thought about that for a little while. And I thought, wait a minute. So I'm trying to understand the mind of God through a religion. Whatever the creator is, it's too big for this little mind to ever encompass. I'm just one thread in an infinite tapestry spread across the cosmos. That's it. My faith has to be that I will be put in the right place to fit his plan, his tapestry, his completed picture. And then I thought about the Our Father. And what is that really saying? I'm not a Christian, but Jesus didn't say memorize these magical words. He said pray like this. And then he gave instructions on, praying that God will take care of your daily needs so that you can help God with his plan. And I think that's what this is really all about. Getting out of the way of ourselves, learning to love is the easiest way to connect with God. God is love. And if you do believe, as I do, that everything is one, then hatred doesn't make any sense because you're only hating yourself.
Mm. Absolutely. I think there's an innate thing, isn't there? You do something kind for someone, you feel good. Where does that come from if it wasn't a natural predisposition of being human?
Yeah, I agree.
So what?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't believe in philanthropy.
Yeah.
I don't believe in altruism. No, I believe in philanthropy. Excuse me. I don't believe in altruism because I help people. Look, I'm the director of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research, and we are an international organization that helps people for free and anonymously. And I do that because it makes me feel good. That's not altruistic. I do it because I feel good helping others.
Yes.
It doesn't make me a saint. It just makes me feel good. So that's me, and I'm getting my reward there.
I totally know what you mean. I recently raised some money for someone, and it wasn't public, and they didn't thank me, and I felt a little bad by that. And it's like, but why do I need thanks when it wasn't? But for the person that I did it for, I needed that, and that, like you said, that was for me. That wasn't for anything else. The point was raising the money to help this person, and that's what right. kind of happened. So yeah, I totally see what you mean. But it's interesting, isn't it? That's built into us.
Yeah. Well, it's like Jesus said, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. So when I do something, I don't want to announce it. I don't even like being thanked, to be honest with you. It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. And you do a lot of helping. Just before we started, you were saying how many kind of cases you work on a day. That blew my mind.
Well, if somebody comes to me and they're afraid, it's, you help them. That's all. And far too often, sadly, I'm going to let you in on a dirty secret. I'm not fascinated by the paranormal. Okay. I don't care one bit about the paranormal. I do this because of the media, because of the crap that I see out there, where people want to prey on your fear. And unfortunately, the public sees this and everyone's saying demon, 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 and I've got an attachment and I've got a portal. And they always go to the most scary thing possible. When the truth is, when you hear footsteps in the night outside your bedroom, it's probably the old man that lived in the house or your grandmother come to check on you. And it's not something you should be afraid of. Your fear has taken a beautiful experience and turned it into something terrifying. I point to the movie with Nicole Kidman, The Others.
Yes, great film.
I won't spoil it, but if you want to know about ghosts and what the experience is like for them, I think that's about as close as you can possibly get.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's fascinating. I've dealt with cases, Chris, where, and I always talk about this one because it was so typical of this, where I got a call and it turned out I was the fifth person that they'd been in touch with, and this poor couple were in their homes and they had crucifixes all over the walls. They were hyper fixating on this, and lots of different people have been in, investigators, and I don't know what it's like where you are here in the UK. Someone can set up a website, say they're a paranormal investigator. They're not, everyone in my team, for example, is DBS checked, all this type of stuff. I'm very careful, but you are essentially inviting anyone into your home, and they were told they had a legion of demons in their home. Yeah. And there was no evidence for for any of it. But then their hyperfixation was then manifesting into the creation of seeing this type of activity occur. And I went in and says,
Absolutely.
knock it off. Come on, let's see what's going on. And our advice then was not even the paranormal. It was about looking after their mental health, looking after their well-being. My psychic medium that I brought in with me, Pamela, she didn't do any spiritual work. She was like, you're here, you're obsessing over what's going on here. When did you even last go outside? And we made them walk us to the car just to even get out the house, you know. Is that something that you kind of have seen a lot?
Absolutely. You just described most cases. The truth is, even when there is something paranormal, there is an underlying reason it's negative. And you need to identify that. I just had a case, and I'm working on it still, with a poor young woman who was told she had an attachment, a demonic dark entity attachment. And she has now spent 20,000 euros on different crackpot cures and people who are supposedly removing these attachments. And she feels great for about a week. And then, of course, somehow that attachment comes back. You know, she has actual diagnoses of issues that might be causing the problems that she's having. And it would rather not believe that it's something inside of her, but it's external to her. I understand the power of fear. We both have grown up with the power of fear.
Yes.
I want to educate people to the point where we can empower them. Because what I've seen is, yes, absolutely, there are real spirits. There are ghosts. But there are not demons. They don't exist. What does exist is a thought form, a manifestation, a true spirit created by our living energy that takes on a life of its own, becomes either a poltergeist or we give it form. Now, that can be demonic. It could be a jinn. It could be a pombero here in Paraguay, where I am currently, which is just a little elfin man. It can be a wolf creature, a wolfman creature. They're common all over the world. These are given form by us because when we're faced with the unknown, we would rather put a face on it, even if that face is the devil. And if culturally that's what you're told you should be believing it is, that's what you're going to picture. And that's what it will become. But they are reactive. They are not anything like what you would imagine a true fallen angel would have to be. It hasn't existed since the beginning of time. It does not have infinite knowledge. If it did, why would it be wasting its time with a poor family who has been struggling already? Why tear them apart? Why isn't it going after a general with his finger on the button or who has control of 10,000 troops? If it hates us, why isn't it actually causing more damage?
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. And one of the things I said to this family, I said, with all due respect, like if there was a legion of demons, they wouldn't be wanting to come into your little flat in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
You know. And I think, you know, in the reality is those that crave power probably would be even more susceptible to being enticed to that. So I completely agree with you there. And I think even if we look at in the past, which you know far more about theology than I do, demons weren't always evil in the past, were they? In Christianity, they were a bit like the jinn are now. They had multiple. Some were good, some were bad, some were completely indifferent, and religion shaped that idea.
Well, actually, if you go really far back to the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, daemons, Daemon. A daemon was actually the go-between between the gods and humanity. Aristotle talked about his demon as his inspiration, as his messenger for his wisdom.
Right.
But we took the ancient gods. For instance, when the Jews were in Babylon and they escaped, they took those gods and demonized them. So Astarte became a demon. Baal became Beelzebub. And these were actually good gods in their own time and in their own land that we then turned into something else. Even the idea of Satan, he was El Satan, which was the spiritual prosecutor for the court of heaven. And it was a position in the court of heaven. It was not a person or angel. Over time, he became Satan. And even in the book of Job or Isaiah, he is still a prosecutor. He's still there to test your faith. And if, from the right perspective, if you look at Jesus wandering in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, when Satan shows up and tempts him, he's testing his faith, preparing him for what's to come ahead. So we didn't get this modern idea of the leader of hell and his legions until the Middle Ages. That's when that really solidified.
Yeah, and I suppose hell itself is Hela, isn't it? From Norse, and Lucifer's bringing up light. Is it not? Is that not right?
Hela came about far separately.
Right.
They're just parallel.
Okay.
But not one from the other. Hell is mentioned, but in the Bible, but I don't believe any of us go to hell. I really don't. Even when it talks about Jesus going into hell to take all the souls out of hell, why were they there in the first place? I've never understood that. And I'm not a theologian or an expert in Christianity. I was lucky enough to study with a lot of people who were, but I'm a field investigator. That's what I do.
Yeah. Do you think, I'm interested in your perspective then of exorcisms, and how much is like belief and consent related to a lot of this stuff?
Exorcism rites are common in most religions in the world. They are not all combative. They're not all going to war. Some of them are mediation, sitting down and trying to figure out why the spirit's there, what they are trying to accomplish, and then saying, look, you're hurting this person. What is it you want, and how do we help you to get what you want so you'll move on and leave this soul in peace? But I've had almost 11,000 cases in my life, most of which, honestly, simple, easy cases, one or two conversations and I'm done. But of all those cases, I've had about 12 that required exorcism.
Right.
And I am a reluctant exorcist. I have used the rites. I have, in an emergency, I did it the first time and it worked. But what I have found is if the family or the person doesn't believe in it, doesn't believe in what you're doing, it will not work. You must, and my grandparents taught me this, you work with the faith of the people you're serving, not with your own faith, because it's all about them. Any ritual is only there to focus your faith and your intention into a tangible outcome. But, and this is something I learned in the Maurice Theriault case, which is the man known as Frenchie in the Nun movies. No, the Nun does not exist. Those movies are wonderful fantasies, but they're just fantasies. But Maurice was a real man who had a tragic life. And he was abused horribly, and he was coming under possession by his father. My grandfather said it was his father the first time we met.
Right.
He changed his mind because my grandfather was very Catholic. And anytime he was faced with over-the-top phenomena, he fell back on his religion. And his only explanation was demon.
Yes.
I've been lucky. I've lived all over the world. And I have found that these things manifest according to our cultural and spiritual beliefs. That says a lot more about us than it does about fallen angels. But Maurice, he had a successful exorcism. Matter of fact, my grandfather, I was, if you go on YouTube, you can see this video of the exorcism. I'm the young man standing between Bishop McKenna and Maurice to protect him. And my grandfather was 10 feet away from me having a heart attack during that exorcism. We didn't realize it until the next morning when my grandmother called me and said he had been rushed to the hospital overnight.
Right. That's scary. And was that they were doing the rites, or what was that the force of it?
I think so. My grandmother didn't, though. She thought it was a case we did earlier in the day, which was a poltergeist case, which I will say there was a lot of power in that house. So I'm not positive. But the thing is, the reason I bring this case up, because of his trauma, we didn't yet understand. I was only 20, and I was just studying psychology. We didn't understand he required follow-up. He required therapy and treatment for his PTSD. And a few years later, he came under attack again. He wasn't strong enough. And he ended up shooting his wife, blowing her arm off, and then taking his own life. His father killed his wife and himself in exactly the same manner.
That's very sad. Yeah, very sad.
So that, to me, yes, this is real. It is very deadly. It is not something that people should get into because it fascinates them only, or because it's exciting. It has to be because they want to help, and they have to focus on the people first. It's not about that 5-second clip of something flying across the room. Who cares? I don't care if I ever catch anything on film. That's not why I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to convince anybody of the paranormal at all. If you don't believe, chances are you won't be bothered. You're the dad in the house, the guy who's too logical to believe in it. He's the last one to experience anything. It's the women and the children who are getting bothered first because they're far more open to the idea.
Is that really kind of fascinating link with that belief, isn't it? And so do you think his trauma was self-manifesting into some entity? So what is the
No,
mechanics?
I really do think it was his father. I think it was his father.
You think it was his father?
And the reason I think that, that first day we went to visit Maurice, my grandparents did the interview, and my grandfathers thought, all right, yeah, it sounds like it's your dad.
Right.
Why don't we go to his grave, and Maurice, I want you to tell him you forgive him, that you love him, and you want him to be at peace. And we're there, and Maurice is off to my right, about 3 meters away. And he's standing in front of the grave, and he's crying. And he's saying, Dad, I love you. I just want you to be at peace. And we all watched him and heard this whack. He got punched under the chin so hard, it lifted him off his feet and threw him about 10 feet backward onto his back.
Wow.
It was amazing. And that was when my grandfather said he wanted me and my partner, Ray Jefferson, to start spending lots of time there to gather evidence for an exorcism.
Yeah.
There were 2 other men as well, Roger and Al, and we would take turns.
Yeah. And what did that feel like for you? I've obviously never been in an ecstasy situation, never want to be in an ecstasy situation. What does that feel like? What's the experience like?
That day, it was already the second time I had been with Bishop McKenna working on a case. We had done a spiritual cleansing of a poltergeist house earlier in the day. All I was thinking about that particular day was I wanted Maurice to be free. I'd watched him
Yeah.
come under possession. I'd seen him bleed from the eyes. I'd seen bloody crosses on his back. I'd already seen quite a bit, and I wanted him free. So I was 20. I was too immature and too confident to be thinking about the repercussions at that point.
Right.
Today would be different. I mean, the fact that the next morning my grandfather's in the hospital with a massive coronary, that put it into a little more perspective for me.
That's terrifying. Yeah, absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Like,
of course.
crap.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something we get requests for that, and I point them to the church. I'm like, yeah, I don't deal with that. Not my expertise. So, do you? A funny story actually here in the UK when you talk about thought forms and tulpas. There was a perfect example of this, and I think it was The Damned, the singer of The Damned, and apparently he was very drunk one night, and he came out of a graveyard in front of a car, and he had his makeup on, and kind of like they were terrified, and he scuttled away a bit embarrassed, and then it was in the newspaper, and then people kept seeing a vampire in this graveyard, and it never was. And he said about 50 years later that was me, and it's amazing because I keep seeing these stories of people seeing this vampire. Even people that don't know the stories are still seeing this manifestation of some sort of reality.
Same thing with the Slender Man.
Yeah.
The same thing with the Slender Man. It was created for creepypasta online, and people have manifested it because they believe in it so much. Or Spring Heel Jack. People saw this because everybody talked about it so much that they manifested it. Now, what I find fascinating, yes, I have heard of cases of spiritual manifestation of things like Mother Mary or Padre Pio or whatever. And I feel that I've been visited by Padre Pio. So, take that for what it's worth. But more often than not, these manifestations are negative. And I think that's because fear pumps out so much EMF, so much energy, that we become an engine for that manifestation. We are thinking, what is this? And we create it. We don't see Santa Claus. Santa Claus is not one of our typical manifestations.
No, that's very true. Yeah, interesting. And do you think these manifestations generate their own consciousness, or that they have, or
yes,
that you do? Right.
To a point. As I said, I believe they're reactive.
Yes.
So they react to the way we are feeling and how we are acting. Or no, not acting so much as feeling.
Yeah.
It really is more about what's interior than exterior.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, if you're engaging in domestic abuse, you're acting, and that's also going to maybe create poltergeist activity. I've seen that many times. I just had a case, I don't know, 6 months ago, where a man who had grown up in a haunted house, he'd been terrified of the paranormal. His mother, his sister, his grandmother, all were quite gifted psychically. And he had some gifts. And then he got married. He had 2 children. One was 2.5 years old, and the other little girl was 8 months old. And he felt like there was something in the house, and he was getting scared. He and his wife were having arguments. They were fighting a lot. There was a lot of tension in the house. And he was obsessing over the crib camera, watching it constantly. And the baby, the 2.5-year-old, might bang her head against the crib side or whatever. Perfectly natural for a baby to do. But he would latch onto that as being something that hurt her. And she would talk to spirits that might be in the room, which is not unusual for a child. They talk to things we can't see all the time. They're much more open to it. Their brains are more pliable, and they're much more capable. And he got so scared that when he fought with his wife, she saw a clock fly across the living room. And another time they had an argument, and it was a pile of plates that were in the kitchen, and it flew about 5 feet and on the floor in front of her. And I talked to him about this and said, look, I'm going to tell you what my grandmother taught me. First, work on your energy in the house. If you work on your relationships, you'll take care of more than half the problem immediately. And so he was working on his relationship. He was focusing on them and on not being afraid. And I explained to him that he's probably manifesting this all by himself, that it's all him. And it was. We didn't have to do a spiritual cleansing of the house or anything else. He started sending, it's going to sound a little weird. He sent me 2 photos of his little girl in the bath with this big smile on her face, because she had been so afraid to take a bath for months. And then she was saying, Daddy, I want to go to bed in my own bed tonight. Oh, I'm happy. And it just made him feel so good. He had to share it with our team.
Yeah,
that's the power we have to overcome our fears and to manifest these things.
Yeah, and I guess, like, talking a bit about before, like this, what you were saying as well about the realignment of quantum theory. Quantum collapse is our version of reality by observing it. So what's to say that idea can't be plasticine in what we create in the world around us as well? And I suppose at those moments of very high emotion and tension, and that can create things maybe out of us, like you said, with these strong electromagnetic kind of energies that are going on.
Absolutely. I mean, I've experienced this many, many times in my life, but here's a controlled experiment people can do. And I did have somebody do this for me on my YouTube channel. Somebody who she's honestly a fantastic psychic medium. You know those clocks, they're anniversary clocks, and they have a glass globe over them?
Yes.
Well, we took the glass globe, and we had one of these long pins on a stand, and we put a Post-it note on the pin and covered it with the globe. And then I had her concentrate on making it spin, and she was able to.
Wow.
Yeah, I made sure that, it was under the globe so that no movement, no air was getting at it. It was a controlled environment. But on a larger scale, I have been in a bed that flew across the room with my cousin and I in it. And there were no spirits involved there. This was the same house that Bishop McKinnell had gone in and taken care of. And 2 years later, I went back to visit the family because we were working on creating a support group for other families going through this kind of thing. And the lady of the house, her name was also Lorraine, she invited us to spend the night, and we kicked the 10-year-old out of his bed because, we were jerks. We put our sleeping bags on the bed. The boy was in a sleeping bag on the other side of the room. As we turn off the light, my cousin starts yelling at me. He didn't even believe anything had happened there. And he starts yelling at me because he thinks I'm kicking the bed. And I said, no, John, I'm not doing anything. We turn off the light again. Chris, stop kicking the bed. Picks up, flies 10 feet across the room, smashes down, breaks into pieces. And I just laughed my butt off. I thought that was the most amazing thing I had ever experienced. And my cousin, he was like the road runner. He left smoke rings getting down the stairs as fast as he could. But the thing is, here's the important part. Nothing had happened for 2 years in that former poltergeist case. Not a thing. And nothing ever happened again. So what was really going on there? I think that 10-year-old was pissed off we were taking his bed. He hooked into whatever energy was still lingering And without knowing he was doing it, he threw us across the room.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? And I think
Yeah.
I can't remember, it might have been Goldsmiths, but forgive me, I could be completely wrong there. One of their parapsychology departments came up with a summary of the traits that most people that have poltergeist activity are. And without any, like every single one of them was also on the diagnostic thing for ADHD. And it kind of makes sense in my mind because we have extra sensory perception anyway. We buzz at a slightly different, and like you were saying with children, they seem to be more susceptible. And they've found out recently we maintain all our brain stems. We don't prune them, so we have almost a childlike brain anyway. So some of these elements, and then mixed with trauma, there seems to be some even potential scientific reasoning behind this.
Absolutely, but it's also cultural. There was a study done in an institute in Germany. I'm not capable of saying the name of this institute, but the psychology team there did a cross-cultural examination of reported psychic experiences. And in the Western world, it's I believe was about 30% of people claim to have had some psychic experiences, and it seems to be predominantly women.
Yeah.
Whereas in other parts of the world where culturally is far more acceptable, that number goes up to about 70%, and there is no gender bias whatsoever, depending on the culture.
That's fascinating.
But that says a lot about us as well. And then I think about things when we're talking about the brain. Traumatic brain injury, it immediately rewires your brain, but you can learn to change that wiring and use other parts of your brain to compensate. And as you and I were talking about previously, before we started this talk online, there's also terminal lucidity, where a person may suffer from dementia or Alzheimer's like my grandmother did, and they no longer have the hardware to be that same person they used to be. It doesn't exist. Mm. And yet we have a documented phenomena, which is very real, terminal lucidity, where people all of a sudden are able to be themselves again, talk to you, interact with you in a way that should not scientifically be possible just before they die. Mm. It happened to you and your grandfather. It happened to me and my grandmother.
Yes.
And that is just one example for me that we are the receiver and not the generator of consciousness. And I think of us like as a radio. And yes, you can break your radio and you're not getting the same stations, or you're getting them garbled, but the signal is still there regardless of what you're receiving.
Mm. It is absolutely, truly fascinating. And just another example, you'll like this one. I've had 2 cases with dogs where my dogs are getting old. And I had a Great Dane called Xandor, and he was just old and he sleeps all day. And this one day, I remember him making us smile so much because it was like he was a puppy again. And he was doing all the things that he loved doing as a puppy. And we're like, you're going to be exhausted. And that night he just passed away in his sleep. And it's like he knew. I had a border collie as well, who he was such but he's a border collie, so exceptionally obedient dog. He was always around us and everything. And one day he went missing, and we were like, where's he gone? And we got a phone call from someone in the village, and he's gone to the river, which is a good 15 minutes from our house. He's never done it his entire life. And what he loved doing is going in the river and kind of fishing with his paw. And it's like, he realized he was dying and went there to do the thing that he loved. And he passed away like again that day. So it's fascinating. Even animals seem to have this as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to point to 2 other things for your listeners, because I think this is beautiful. People will say, well, what about animals? Are they ghosts? I think, again, it goes back to connection, because a dog in particular can come back to you, but you're not going to see a lion, for instance, because why would they show up to you? They have no connection to you. Occasionally a cat, but most cats, like my cat, when she died, I saw her once and they said, yeah, I'm a cat. I'm leaving. But my dog Brandy, he stuck around with me for about 20 years until I got a new dog for my son. And he was like, okay, yeah, you're good. I'm leaving. And then last year, I was talking to my uncle on a video call. And I watched his dog walk behind him. And he's got this cute dog. And I thought, oh, there's Katie. He says, no, Katie's over on the couch. I said, did you have a big dog with a big bushy black back? And he said, yeah, that's my German Shepherd who died 20 years ago. But he talks to a medium named, her last name is Caskell. And he said, she told me he's with me all the time. And I had seen this dog physical, just like anybody would, see a dog. And it was a ghost.
Yeah. That's beautiful, isn't it? And I think we do. So many people lose their dogs, and they are family members, and like you say, maybe that's why they have that connection, and that I think does bring some comfort.
Well, dogs to me are the avatar of unconditional love. They are God's gift to us to teach us how to love unconditionally, because they put up with an awful lot of crap. Yeah, they love us anyway.
They do. They do. I think my cat heard you though speaking about cats, because she's now circling, so she's trying to prove you wrong. Maybe, I don't know. Being offended. One thing you said earlier, and I think this is something we share, and I know this is kind of like the theme of your book as well, is that you were talking about kind of stuff going off and you being, oh wow, this is amazing, and I'm very much like that. Like I said, beating the fear and trying to philosophize on what this all means. And when we see things that bend reality, it is truly exciting. And I think that's very different, a bit like you as well. When I'm going into someone's home that's struggling, that's not exciting. That's trying to help a family, but particularly when there's kids, I find that quite emotional myself. But I do spend a lot of time on my own doing paranormal investigations in like forests and all these kind of ancient places, just to experience it, because I find joy rather than fear in things moving, things occurring, and that communication. Do you want to kind of tell us about that evolution for you?
Well, when I started with my grandparents, I didn't have any other framework other than theirs. But I learned from them so much. I mean, I watched their own evolution and heard from them how when they started out, they didn't believe in anything except ghosts. Right. That's all there were. And then they were confronted by phenomena that they could not explain, and they fell back on their own religion to explain that, which I understand. But I went to college, I studied anthropology and psychology and theology, and it made me question everything. And I realized two of the things in college in particular were the self-fulfilling prophecy, the idea that once you believe in something, you'll make it happen, and labeling theory, where you put a name to something and it becomes that thing. And we see this in actual, like the placebo effect. If I tell you this is a powerful drug, it will be a powerful drug for you. People tend to discount the placebo effect. It's just a placebo effect. No, that's the whole ball of wax right there. That's an amazing phenomena. Your mind took your belief and turned it into reality. How cool is that?
Yeah.
I couldn't embrace Catholicism. I was raised Catholic, but when it came time for confirmation, my mom gave me that choice. I said no. So I started studying with other religions, and over the years, none of them really fit me, but I started to see common threads. And I took my own psychology classes, and I worked with a man named Dr. Ken Ring, who was the grandfather of near-death experience research at the University of Connecticut. And he had a huge impact on me as well. And then the Peace Corps, being in West Africa, learning from those people, and on and on and on and on. By the time I was 26, I looked at what my grandfather was telling me, and he had already said I was a demonologist. And I was very proud of that when I was 22. But by the time I was 26, I said, you know what? No, I'm not an expert in this because I don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. So I can't call myself that. I think far too often now, my grandfather was a religious demonologist. There's a big difference between that and a person who calls himself a demonologist. That person is saying they really understand what demons are. I don't think they do, because you must look at this cross-culturally and try to look at it differently. I have a dear friend and colleague. His name is Mark Robson. He's in Durham, England. As a matter of fact, he's the one that's doing all the legwork for setting up everything for my tour through Great Britain in October. And he just finished the best scholarly book on demonology that I have ever seen in my life. It is extraordinary. And once it's out, I think it's going to be the book that people go to again and again for decades to come. But once I got rid of my grandparents' framework, because my grandfather in around 1990, he hated psychology.
Right.
He had seen the parapsychology movement, and he thought that's just taking God out of the equation, and what good are they? They're not helping anyone. So his reaction was very visceral. Mine, on the other hand, was more open-minded. And I had to start looking for other answers. Over the years, I thought, all right, well, what are these things? Are they other dimensional beings? Are they aliens? Are they this? Are they that? Where I am today, maybe it won't be where I am in 5 years. It took me many years to finish my book, The Warren Legacy, because I kept finding new research, and it made me reframe my ideas. And if you give me new evidence, I will change my viewpoint. That's what it's supposed to do. My grandparents changed over the years. This is not a field of theology. This is a field of research. And we cannot be dogmatic. And unfortunately, I see too many scientists who become so invested in their own worldview that they discount the evidence. The heliocentric view of the universe, the idea that everything revolves around the sun, it worked great for us to navigate the oceans and to understand most of the world. But there were anomalies on the edges. And it wasn't until the theory of relativity that we understood the rotation of Mercury around the sun, the orbit of Mercury. And I'm saying we have to look at the anomalous data. I'm not trying to overthrow science. No, this is the greatest tool mankind has ever had. Mm. But we have to be willing to expand our views. And happily, I see this in many different disciplines. My goal is that people from many different disciplines will work with me on a multi-pronged approach to the paranormal, because I know the activity, the phenomena is real. Mm. I want to understand why.
Yes. No, I completely agree with you. I mean, this is why this is the Fortean, news podcast, because it's coming from that approach. I call it the church of science, because when there's dogma within it, science says none of this stuff exists, but we know we've been there where we've seen things literally flying about the room. We know it exists.
Exactly.
So it is asking why. And there was that quantum physicist, and he said, I didn't say it could happen, I just said it did happen, and I think that's a perfect quote, isn't it, as a great starting point for all this. I'm aware of time, and you've been really kind to give us this time. And some listeners have sent in some questions. I could talk to you for another 5 hours, but I'm gonna put in their questions as well. So Paul's asked if you could go back in time, what would you ask your grandparents?
For one more day.
One more day. Yeah.
Well, just that. Look, I loved my grandparents and I loved my time with them. And I think I would appreciate it even more today with hindsight. But do I have questions that they can answer about the paranormal? No, unfortunately. Look, they didn't have mentors. I did. I had lots of them, including them. I took what they taught me and I went further with it. It's not because I'm better than them. I had the benefit of them.
Yeah. That was the foundation, wasn't it? What do you think
Yeah.
of you what would you, if you had the chance, theoretically, to go back, what would be the one lesson that you would maybe give them from your learning?
Oh, my grandfather was a bit stubborn. My grandmother, on the other hand, she actually was very open-minded, and she wanted this book written, very much so.
Right.
I would love to know her real thoughts on it. Now, I will say she came to me after she died many times, but one in particular, about 6 months before I found out that the house had been sold. And I was in a dream, and the house, the corridor to the museum was empty when I walked into it. And I turned around, my grandmother was sitting there. And I said, Grandma, what's going on? She said, don't worry about that, dear. How's your project coming? Did you finish your book? I was like, no, Grandma, I'm having a lot of trouble with it because there's so much. And she said, well, you have to finish it. It's very important. I said, I will, I promise. And then I realized 6 months later when the place was sold why the corridor was empty. And she told me not to worry about it. But even so, when I was getting ready to publish the book, a woman had come to me online. Matter of fact, I'll show you. Let me cover her. There we go. See if you can see that. You see the writing says Warren?
Yeah, yeah.
And her name's Sandy. And she, 25 years ago, was a friend of my grandmother's. And she was having some problems with a haunting in her home. And my grandfather had recorded some things for people who were going through hauntings to be played in the house to give them peace, and with prayers and music and so forth. And my grandmother sent that to Sandy, not realizing it was the only recording. And then my grandfather had his heart arrhythmia, and he was incapable of making more. She held on to that for 25 years. I see, look at that.
Wow.
Warren, 2001. It's amazing to me. She said she wanted to give that to me, and I was going to use it for the special edition of my book, and it's part of the special edition. But that night, her 40-some-year-old son was spending the weekend. They were going to go to an art show the next day, and he gets up in his underwear to go to the bathroom, and he looks at the bottom of the stairs to his parents' bedroom, and there's an older woman with a bun in her hair holding a chicken looking at his mother. And she turns, and he's embarrassed because, he's in his skivvies. And she turns, smiles at him, and disappears. He had no idea who she was. But when he told his mother the next day, of course, she knew my grandmother loved her chickens, knew about her bun in her hair, and knew that this was my grandmother giving her blessing for sending this to me.
That's amazing.
So my grandmother did everything she could to make sure that this book gets out to the public. It's very important to her. So nothing would make me happier than to see her reaction.
Yeah, I bet.
Because I haven't had that. She has not visited since then, which is, I miss her.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But that's great validation, isn't it? That's really beautiful validation. So, 2 questions from Lily. When are you going to start the files again? She says.
The Warren files. Yeah, we're actually working on that. We are. It's very time consuming, and I'll be quite honest with you. Not a lot of people listen, and time has to be used properly to help people. I'm trying to get more into reaching out to the public the best way I can, because I'm realizing that, yeah, I want to help people one-on-one every chance I get, but I'm more effective when I'm out here doing it the way we're doing it right now.
Yeah.
And I want people to go to warrenlegacyfoundation.com if they need help. Fill out our little Google form, and we will get you the help you need. I promise. For free, confidentially, we're there for you. But at the same time, things like the Warren Files, I'll be doing that with Mark in the future. We're gonna look at old cases, discuss them, and give a modern perspective on what we're really seeing. I think that's a good way of teaching people.
That's a really good plan. And she also asks, how did your grandparents holiday and relax?
Well, they went to England once a year, every year, and they would do a tour of haunted Great Britain. It was a 3-week tour. They would go 3,000 miles across the country. I did it with them. It was the greatest experience. As a matter of fact, we've recreated it, and hopefully we'll find partners and we'll be able to do that again for people, because nothing would make me happier than to share that experience with people. They did it every year.
Really?
And honestly, my grandmother's favorite thing, though, she loved Sundays with the family. She took care of all of us. Never sat down for the meals, always catering to everybody. I'm like, Graham, will you please sit down? We can get up and get our own stuff. It's okay, dear. Don't worry, honey. But that was her. She just was the most caring, loving, angelic person you could ever hope for. And the holidays, holy goodness, did she go all out for every holiday. It was amazing. Whether it was Easter and she had bunny villages all over the living room, or Christmas decked out like you can't begin to imagine, with more gifts per person than I've ever seen Santa Claus give anybody. It's just amazing. She just was the best. She really was. And she would cook for 2 weeks preparing, every pie, every candy, every cookie, every cake, every side dish. Just, she loved family.
Yeah. And making people happy by the sounds of it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. If you went into her house, hi, honey, are you hungry? Can I get you something? Even if she had just met you.
Yeah.
She didn't care.
Sounds a lot like my grandmother. She used to have like lines of kids knocking on the door to chat to her when she was retired. And the final question is from a young person called Bella. And she asks, what case scared you the most and has affected you to this day?
I already talked about it. Maurice Theriault.
Yeah.
It taught me there needs to be follow-up. And we always need to look for that underlying issue that makes that person or family vulnerable. Because if we don't address that, all of the rituals in the world can help the immediate circumstances, but not the cause. And that means it will remanifest. I know that's hard for people. They want the magic wand to just wave and it'll all go away. That's not the real world.
Yes.
No. And that's what I learned. That's the most important lesson I learned.
Yeah. No. Thank you so much for your time, Chris. I just want to finish off with asking you, where people can get this book. Tell me why they should get this book as well, and about your website and the forthcoming kind of UK and Ireland tour.
Well, what is that book?
This is the Warren Legacy. Can you see it?
Oh, I see.
Yeah. You
let's
might
see.
have heard
It
of
says,
it. It's what the paranormal
yeah,
reveals about consciousness and reality.
it is not a collection of ghost stories. Yes, the first chapter, it will terrify you, but it'll also show you stories of people coming back from the dead with love. By the end of it, you'll go through a journey of enlightenment and ultimately to empowerment and take you away from your fears. That's what everybody is telling me when they read this, is how good they feel and how they want to keep coming back to this again and again. I will be in London on the 11th of October at a place called Faclor. You'll be able to get tickets for there and also Seven Stories in Newcastle on the 9th. I'm going to be at Carlisle Castle doing a book signing and a short little presentation on the 10th of October. We've got upcoming dates in Manchester and York, Whitby, Scarborough, Durham, Leeds, and hopefully we'll be also looking at the Midlands, Wales, Scotland, and even in the South. But that's for November. We have my dates all set and available for people in Ireland right now. Those are from the 13th of October till the 26th. 4 of those have sold out already. They've sold out in the first 12 minutes. But there are still some dates available. And everything is either available now at chrismckinnell.com for Ireland. And on the 29th, we will have everything available for England. Right now, I want to concentrate on one, roll out the others, give announcements of what's coming. And then on 29th of September, we will make those tickets available to everyone. I want to do it all at once that way because I did see how they sold out so quick. And I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to get the tickets. It's the only fair way to do it.
Yeah. Nice.
Now, having
Exciting.
said that, I'm going to be in Albania. So, it's a hop, skip, and a jump, and I'll be back. But it could be a year or longer.
Yeah. It's going to be really exciting, and I'm sure people are really pleased you come in.
I forgot to say this. The book is also available at chrismckinnell.com. And more, here's something for free that I'd like to offer people because I think it's important. What good is my experience and my knowledge if I'm not sharing it? If you go to the research tab for my work on chrismckinnell.com, you can download my research for free, my academic paper. Now, that's the spine of my book, but the book goes a lot farther with stories and interpretations. The academic paper is just that. It is very concise. It is very, very disciplined because I have to present that in a way where I am showing you how to falsify what I'm saying. Otherwise, what good is it? I am not trying to convince people. I'm trying to say, look, this is what I have observed. I'm looking for people, academics, to work with me so that we can see what's really going on here.
Yeah.
So I have to do that in a different way. The book is far more readable.
Yeah. I've downloaded the academic paper as well. Which one should I read first, the book or the paper?
You know what? I'm going to say read the book first.
Read the book first.
Because the book, you'll appreciate the academic paper a lot more.
Right.
The book has a wonderful bibliography in it you can go down the rabbit hole with so many studies and papers that I consulted to create this book. And you honestly, it's a resource that any good researcher or person fascinated by the paranormal should look at. Not because of me, but because of all those other resources that are available.
Wonderful. Chris, just before I let you go, I want to say you give so much of you to this community, of your knowledge, time, and generously giving you time like this as well. And I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the community.
No, my pleasure. Honestly, like I said earlier, I see the silliness that's out there, and this is very real, and it impacts so many lives. It needs to be treated with respect. You know, I've made this metaphor before. It's like the paranormal is like electricity. When you don't know what you're dealing with, it can kill you. But when you do know, it can light up the world. And I think that's what my message is. Treat the paranormal with respect, but also treat it with a sense of wonder.
Yes.
Not so much fear, just wonder.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at the fairy lights, not stick your finger in plug sockets.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I'll steal that.
Thank you so much for coming on the 14 News podcast.
Thank you very much, my friend. Cheers.